How many of you enjoy butter? You're a fan of butter. If you got some biscuits, you got to have some butter on it. If you got a plate of waffles, you got to have some butter on it. If you got some grits, you got to have some salt and butter. I don't know about this sugar stuff, but salt and butter. Definitely some pepper. We're a salt, butter, pepper church here. If you got sugar in your spirit, I'll find you a new place of worship. The only exception is my wife. She's a sugar person, but I can't put her out because I made vows. But nevertheless, I enjoy butter. But in 1981, somebody invented something called I Can't Believe It's Not Butter. I did some homework. Y'all know how I do. I did a little homework. I dug deep into the archives to figure out why they called this I Can't Believe It's Not Butter. And come to find out, the name originated from a comment that was made by the husband of a company's secretary as he sampled the product. In other words, the secretary's husband was at this meeting and he tasted this product and he said, "My God, I can't believe this is not butter." What he was saying is, this tastes so good, you can't convince me that this ain't the real deal. That this tastes so amazing that there's no way you all aren't tricking me. I can't believe it's not butter. I began to think about that as I began to think about this text. Ultimately, what this man was saying is, I believe what you're telling me, but what I'm tasting conflicts with what you're telling me. You're telling me this is butter, but what I'm tasting says otherwise. Well, the man in today's text brings his son to be delivered. His son, as we read in the text, has a demon. But this is not just a regular demon. This is the only instance that we see of a demon that literally caused a boy to be mute and deaf. In other words, this demon caused him to not be able to hear and not be able to speak. This was not a malfunction in his body. This was demonic possession. Mark is the only one who gives credit and tells this story about this instance. It's the only time we see this happening. And so this demon possession has so taken over this young man that he cannot hear and he cannot speak. He brings his son to the disciples because, of course, it would make sense that the people who hang with Jesus can do what Jesus does. Amen. And I think the world has been disappointed because they keep coming to the folks who say they hang with Jesus. But for some reason, we don't do what he do. They come to the folks who say they hang with Jesus, but they don't feel the love of Jesus. They say they come to the folks who hang with Jesus, but they don't see the miracles that Jesus performed. They come to the folks who hung with Jesus, supposedly hang with Jesus, but they're not met with the wisdom and the treatment that came from our Savior. He says, it only made sense to me that I would bring him to them since I didn't know where you were, but I brought him to them and they couldn't do what you did. And Jesus is fed up with his disciples because he's been walking with them for at least 2 years now. And he's like, my God, you unbelieving generation, how long must I be here? Listen, I really only got 3 years to do what I need to do. Y'all about to move me into overtime right now. Listen, how long must I be here with you unbelieving generation? Bring them to me. He brings the boy to Jesus, and immediately the boy starts going into his convulsions. He starts foaming at the mouth, gnashing his teeth, and this is what the father has been accustomed to. He's showing all the symptoms and the signs of the demonic possession, but Jesus is not moved. Jesus just says, how long has he been this way? He says, from a child. But he doesn't just tell him how long he's been that way. He tells him how bad it's gotten. He says he's been doing this since he was a child. And it's so bad that the demon will literally throw him in water and throw him in fire. Now, that was a common thing during that time. There would be open spaces of water, and there would be open fires, especially to keep cool or to keep warm, at night. And this demon would see these opportunities, would take possession of this young man, and would toss him into the water to drown him or throw him into the fire to burn him. Can you imagine this scene? What that tells me is that this boy is covered in scars from his encounters with this demon. See, it's one thing to have a demon that no one can see, but it's a whole nother situation to have a demon that leaves scars on you. This boy was distorted, disfigured. He was covered in burns. His skin pigmentation was probably off from times of lacking oxygen when he was drowning by this demon. He says, this is how bad it has gotten. And listen, if there's anything you can do.
My God, my God.
Now, isn't that something?
My God.
He brought his son to the disciples under the impression that his disciples could heal because Jesus could heal.
Yes, sir.
But now he's saying, Jesus, if you can. Don't miss that. He initially brought his son to the disciples because he knew that Jesus was a healer. So he was under the impression that since Jesus is a healer and they hang out with the healer, that they can heal. Yeah. But because his disciples could not heal, he's now questioning, can Jesus heal? Yes, sir. He says, if you can do anything, have compassion on us and heal him. And Jesus says, if you can, you must not know about me. I'm from Nazareth. I'm that Jesus. I'm not Jesus from Samaria. I'm Jesus from Nazareth. I'm Mary's boy. I'm the one who came into this world without a daddy, so to speak, because my daddy is in heaven on the throne. I came here by way of really the truth of the matter is I am a miracle myself. And so you're asking me for a miracle as though I'm not a miracle. But I am the miracle. What you mean if you can? But you know what? All things are possible. Everything is possible. No thing is impossible to those who believe. Don't miss that last part. It's possible to those who believe. Yes, sir. Which means Jesus was diagnosing his issue before he opened his mouth. And the man says, I believe. Help my unbelief. Okay, what he was saying is, I hear what you're saying, but life tastes so bitter that I can't believe what you're telling me. Have you ever been in that situation where you know what the Bible says, but life just tastes too bitter? Have you ever been in a situation where Pastor Mike was preaching real good, but you really couldn't muster up an amen because what you were tasting in life conflicted with what Pastor Mike was preaching? Have you ever been in a situation where you look back over your life and you saw where the Lord brought you from, but where you were right now tasted so bad that you forgot about where the Lord brought you from? I can't believe. Because it don't taste like what you're saying. In the same way, this husband tasted the I can't believe it's not butter and said, this is too good to be true. I believe the father was in the same predicament. That I know it's possible for my son to be healed. I know. But I've been tasting this thing for too long. Yes, sir. And I want to share with you today 3 ways to increase weary faith.
Lord, that's good. Right?
Has anybody's faith ever been a little weary? Yes, sir. Have you ever found yourself at a point where you're questioning, God, I know I grew up in the church, but does this church thing really work? You ever been in a place where, God, I know you did it last time, but you sure you're going to do it this time? You ever been in a place where something so traumatic just rocked your world to the place where you began to question the rock you were standing on? Yes. I want to share with you 3 ways to increase weary faith. 3 ways to increase weary faith. I believe the first way we have to increase weary faith, according to this text, is we have to locate the cause of your unbelief. I'm going to say that again. We have to locate, I'm going to give you 3 C's today. We have to locate the The cause. Somebody say the cause.
The cause.
Say it one more time. The cause.
The cause.
One more time for the Holy Ghost. The cause.
The cause.
The reason I needed you to say that 3 times is because we don't like to wrestle with causes. We don't like to deal with the cause. We don't mind dealing and living through the effects, but we don't like to do the legwork required to deal with the cause. And I would argue on this morning that most of us are wrestling with effects when really we should just be dealing with the cause. And if you would deal with the cause, you would wrestle a lot less with the effects. Some of us are in afflictions right now because we won't deal with the cause. Some of us are stuck right now because we won't deal with the cause. Some of us can't get no sleep at night because we won't deal with the cause. Somebody say the cause. You got to locate the cause of your unbelief. You're saying, Pastor Mike, where you getting that from? Verse 20 says, so they brought the boy to him, to Jesus. And when the spirit saw him, it immediately threw the boy into convulsions. He fell to the ground and he rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Now, Jesus is standing here. And they brought the boy to Jesus. And the first thing Jesus says is, how long has this been happening to him?
How long?
They bring the boy to Jesus. And Jesus doesn't cast out the demon. Jesus doesn't sprinkle oil on him. Jesus doesn't spit in the mud and make spittle and put it on his eyes. Jesus doesn't even lay a hand on him. Jesus doesn't even talk to the demon. Jesus asked the Father, how long? Somebody say, how long?
How long
has this been happening to him? And the Father says, from childhood. I looked at this and of course, again, I like to interview the text. And so I'm asking Jesus, why are you making conversation? You're God. You're the Alpha and Omega. You're the beginning and the end. You're the Almighty One. You don't have to make conversation. You tell demons where to go and they go.
Yeah.
You're God. You don't wrestle with demons. You arrest demons. You're God. Why are you having this conversation? Why are you making small talk in the middle of this big situation? And he said, because I needed the Father to recognize the cause. Wow. Before we could go forward in the matter, we needed to go backward. Jesus arrives on the scene. They bring the boy to him. And the first thing Jesus has to say is, how long has this been happening? He's trying to get the Father to understand that the reason you're struggling in your belief is because there's something you're not dealing with. Can I argue on this morning that the reason some of us are finding it hard to believe God, especially in this season of pandemic, especially in this season of epidemic, especially in this season of unemployment, especially in this season of economic crisis, especially in this season of governmental disorder, especially in this season of death and disaster, we're struggling to believe God because maybe there's something we have not dealt with. He says, how long has he been this way? And the Father says, well, if I think about it, he's been struggling with this since he was a child, which means this father has been struggling with his belief from the time his child was born. That this man believed God until his child was born. It's amazing how something happening to someone else can affect my faith.
Yes, sir. You're right.
He says, listen, I need you to go back with me.
My God.
Because we cannot go forward until we go back. And many of us are struggling in our belief because we're scared to go back. Why would I be scared to go back? I'll tell you a story. I remember I had lost something. And I was going all around the house. I was going all in the car. And I just couldn't find this thing I was looking for. And of course, my wife would ask the most obvious question. Well, where's the last place you had it? I said, honey, I know the last place I had it. And it's not in the last place that I had it. She said, are you sure? I said, yeah, I'm sure. I just looked at the last place I had it. And it wasn't in the last place I had it. She's like, okay. And she just went on about her business. Now I continue tearing the house up. I'm flipping stuff upside down. I'm tossing stuff around. I'm going back and forth to the same places, back and forth to the same places, back and forth to the same places, looking at the same things over and over again. But I didn't go back to the place I last had it. Somebody asked me why. Because I had made up in my mind that it could not possibly be in the last place I had it. Why? Because I went to the last place I had it, and the place that I would have had it, it wasn't there. Finally, I get fed up. Finally, I get sick of it, and I go back to the last place I had it. But this time, I go back to the last place I had it, and I find it. Okay.
Come on, sir.
I didn't want to go back there because I was afraid that I might see something I missed the first time. My pride told me you can't go back because if you go back, you have to admit you missed something. Many of us are struggling in our faith today because we're scared to go back and we're looking forward and we're wondering why we can't go forward. We're wondering why no matter how many faith conferences we go to, our faith is still low. No matter how many faith revivals we go to, our faith is still low. No matter how many public fasts on faith we go on, our faith is still low. No matter how many Daniel fasts you hop on, no matter how many virtual conferences you jump on, your faith is still low. The problem is you're trying to move forward in your faith, but you cannot move forward in your faith until you deal with what's behind you that you fear.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And for many of us, the thing we fear behind us is us.
Yeah.
I found what I was looking for in the last place I had it. But I had convinced myself that I looked already. And because I looked already, I didn't need to look again. Somebody say, I got to look again.
I got to look again.
I feared seeing something I missed the first time. And some of us have quit on our faith. Some of us have thrown our faith away because we looked at the situation one time, but we were too scared to look at it again. Because to look at it again, watch this, I got to admit that I missed something. That maybe I'm blaming you for my lack of faith, but the truth of the matter is it's my fault. Maybe something happened that I don't want to deal with. And the truth of the matter is I'm blaming my present circumstances for my faith when really it was a traumatic situation from my childhood that was just too painful for me to go back to. He says, before we can go forward, I need you to go back, but you can't be scared to go back. Why would this man be scared to go back? Because to go back, he has to relive all the nights he stayed up watching over his baby. Think about that. His parents could not go to sleep. Because they had to watch to make sure this demon would not throw their child into the water, throw this child into the fire. Now you have to wrestle with all the sleepless nights. Now you have to wrestle with the nights that you had to bandage the burns. Now you have to wrestle with the times you had to perform CPR on your baby. Now you have to wrestle with the times that your child laid there lifeless, filled with water. Now you have to deal with the times of, oh my God, how did I miss them this time? Now you have to deal with the fact of the embarrassment of your neighbors ready to call CPS on you because they're wondering what in the world are you doing over there. Now you have to deal with things you don't want to deal with, and you're trying to go forward, and God is saying you cannot go forward until you go backwards. You can't believe me for this because you lost your faith back here. And we're trying to find our faith in sermons. We're trying to find our faith in conferences. We're trying to find our faith in books. And God is saying it's not in the sermon. It's not in the book. It's not in the conference. It's where you left it. I'm going to be honest with you, though. I think this shows a level of compassion from Jesus. Because Jesus says, listen, I can snap my fingers and make this over.
Yes, sir.
But now you're going to miss an opportunity to grow. Yeah. Many of us are saying, Jesus, take the wheel. Jesus, take it away. Jesus, make it better. And Jesus is saying, I can do that. But then what happens to you?
Exactly.
See, some of the things that we're calling affliction, some of the things that we're calling burdens are really growing pains.
Yes, sir.
That Jesus is trying to get you to grow in your faith, but you're resisting that thing because there's something you don't want to go back to. I don't know about you, but I'm so glad that he promises me, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why? For thou art with me. Thy rod and staff comfort me. Okay, yea, though I walk through the valley of that childhood trauma. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the molestation. Yea, though I walk through the valley of them walking out on me. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the divorce. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the church hurt. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the firing. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the scandal. Yea, though I walk through the valley of them talking about me. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the bankruptcy. Yea, though I walk through the valley of losing everything. Yea, though I walk through the valley, he's with me. In order to locate the cause of your belief, you got to trust the one that's walking with you.
Amen.
And the problem is many of you are grabbing hands of people who are not willing to walk with you. And because you're not willing to deal with it on your own, you're stuck.
You're helping us.
The way to increase weary faith is I have to be willing to locate the cause of my unbelief. And I cannot be afraid of what I find when I go back to the place I lost it. Locate the cause of your unbelief. Not only must you locate the cause of your unbelief, but you have to stretch your capacity to believe. You have to stretch your capacity to believe. Somebody say capacity. You got to stretch your capacity to believe. What am I saying? Verse 22, he says, and many times it has thrown him into the fire or water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, Jesus, you've opened blinded eyes, but if you can do anything, Jesus, you've walked on water, if you can do anything, Jesus, you fed multitudes, if you can do anything, Jesus, you've opened blinded eyes, if you can do anything, Jesus, you've cast out demons out of other people, if you can do anything. Have compassion on us and help us. And Jesus said to him, if you can, if you can. Oh, okay. You came to me under the premise that I could, but now you're asking me if I can. You came to me under the premise that I could, but then somebody got in your way and now you're questioning if I can. You came to me with the premise that all things were possible, but somebody let you down and now you're wondering if anything is possible. Jesus said, if you can, everything. Somebody say everything.
Everything
is possible. Somebody say possible.
Possible.
For the one who believes. Now think about this. He says, Jesus asked him, how long has he been this way? He answers the question. He says, he's been this way from this point. Now, Jesus hasn't asked him anything else. He goes on to say, and it has thrown him into the fire or the water to destroy him. Now, don't miss that. Jesus asked him, how long? He never asked him how bad.
Yeah.
Jesus said, how long?
My God.
He starts telling him how bad. Oh, okay. What's happening here? Jesus is giving him an opportunity to figure out the problem. See, you lost your belief because you let your experience mess up your expectation. I'm going to say that again. You allowed your experience. See, I asked you how long he's been this way, and you started telling me the experience. I didn't ask you how bad it was. I asked you how long it is. Now, the reason you're telling me how bad it is because you're trying to measure if I can actually do this thing. And the only reason you're trying to figure out if I can do this thing is because church folk. You met some church folk that now have you questioning, can I do what I do? Okay. You brought him to me. I didn't come to you. You brought him to church. The church ain't come to you. You came saying, I know you can do this. I didn't come tell you I could do it. but you let something get between us.
My God, help us. Yes, sir.
And now you're giving more credit to your experience than you are to the expectation. I know it's been bad, but I'm God. I know it's been painful, but I'm God. I know it's been stressful, but I'm God. I know you haven't been able to sleep at night, but I'm God. I know they're handing out pink slips, but I'm God. I know you don't know how you're going to pay the bill, but I'm God. I know every light on your dashboard is on in the car, but I'm God. I know it looked like your baby is never going to make it to the potential you have for them, but I'm God. And why would you let anything less than God change your expectation of God? Listen, I know he the pastor, but I'm God. I know that's the head usher, but I'm God. He says, listen, your experience should not change your expectation, because your faith is not in the experience. Your faith is in me. Okay. There was a little boy who every day would play outside with a box. And his neighbor would come walking by, Mr. Wilson, and he would say, "Hey, Mr. Wilson, what do you think about my my new car?" And Mr. Wilson would say, "That's not a car, that's a box." And he would go in the house. And the next day he would come by and he would say, "Hey, Mr. Wilson, what do you think about my spaceship?" And he would say, "That's not a spaceship, it's a box." And he would go in the house. The next day, "Mr. Wilson, what do you think about my clubhouse?" He would say, "It's not a clubhouse, it's a box." He goes into the house and he's obviously disturbed, and his wife asked him, "Honey, what's wrong with you?" He said, "Every day I come home and I walk past the neighbor's house and the little boy is asking me what I think about all these things, and it's just a box. And I keep telling him that it's just a box, but every day he's just telling me something new that this thing is." And she said, "Honey, who's really wrong here? Is he wrong for believing that it could be more? Or are you wrong for only believing it could be that?"
That's good right there. That's good. My God, help us.
Jesus says, "I know you've only seen him bound. But just because you've only seen him bound doesn't mean he can't be free." Okay. I know you've only seen your bank account filled with overdraft fees. But does it mean your bank account can't have 5, 6, 7, 8 zeros? Okay. I know you've only seen your child in trouble. But does that mean your child can't be the next president of the United States of America?
Come on.
Okay. I know you've only seen you and your spouse arguing back and forth. But does that mean y'all can't retire on the islands sipping mojitos together in the sun? Okay. He says, I know what you see,
My God.
but it ain't based on what you see. Can I diagnose some of y'all today? The problem is you got good eyes but bad vision. The reason you struggle in your faith is because you have great eyes. The problem is you got poor vision. Okay, what am I saying? If you look up the word vision in Merriam-Webster, I love this definition. Vision is the manifestation of something immaterial to your senses. Also, it is the power of imagination. Notice it is not just sight, but it is the manifestation of something immaterial to your senses. Also, it is the power of imagination. The worst thing that has happened to some of us is we grew up. What am I saying? As a child, you believed anything was possible. As a child, you could look at a box and see a mansion. As a child, you could look at a bicycle and see a motorcycle. As a child, you would look at a G.I. Joe and you would see a whole war zone. As a child, we believe anything because we have imagination. And the problem is you cannot have adult-like faith if you don't have a childlike imagination.
Yes.
The problem is you see too much. You see too much. And God is saying, the only reason you're asking me if it's possible is because you've only been looking at what is. Can I challenge some of you to close your eyes from time to time? Because the problem is you keep looking at the bills. And you need to close your eyes and start seeing what God has next for you. The problem is many of you keep looking at your spouse and where they are. You need to close your eyes and remember that he knows the thoughts he has towards them. Thoughts of peace and not of evil to give them an expected end. Some of you keep looking at what's going on in the workplace. You need to close your eyes and see that business that he's been dropping in your spirit every day while you're sitting there punching the clock. The problem is you have good eyes, but you got bad vision. And you've turned into Mr. Wilson, where you can only see a thing one way. And because you've seen that thing that way so long, you can't see anything else. Can I tell you what is really going on here? The problem with this particular father and why he was struggling is because he has seen his son that way for so long, he stopped imagining what his son could be. And many of you have seen yourself the same way so long that you cannot imagine what God has shown you about yourself. And the Bible lets us know God is not a man that he should lie, nor the son of man that he should repent. And some of you need to repent today, because every time you look in the mirror, you call God a liar. And God is saying, I know what you see in the mirror, but I need you to remember what I showed you. I know you remember what they told you, but I need you to remember what I told you. See, the problem is many of you are hanging on to the words of your parents who said you're going to always be like your daddy, or you're going to always be like your mama, or you're never going to be nothing in your life. Or you remember that teacher who told you that you would never graduate and you would never make this amount of money. But I need you to remember what God told you. I know what they said, but I need you to remember what God said. I know what you see, but I need you to see what God sees. And here's the thing. You won't see what God sees until you stop seeing what you see. The problem here is that the father has good eyes. He just has bad vision. And so we need to locate the cause of our belief, but we also need to stretch our capacity. And the only way we can stretch our capacity is we have to go back to childhood. We need to begin imagining again. See, again, the problem is we're seeing a lot, but we're imagining little. And the problem is when you just keep seeing the same thing and you don't challenge it with another sight, this is why people are supposed to make vision boards. See, y'all make a little party out of it. And here's the problem. You make the vision board and then you put it in the closet. No, the whole purpose of the vision board is so that when you get tired of looking at what's going on out the window, you look at your vision board to contradict what you're seeing out the window. And watch this. You're supposed to keep looking at the vision board until what's on the vision board is what you see out the window. We got to stretch our capacity to believe, because the problem is this man has seen his issue so long that he can't imagine anything better. And so he's limiting God's ability with his unbelief. Last but not least, after we locate the cause of our unbelief and we stretch our capacity to believe, we got to make a confession. We got to make a confession. Somebody say, I got to confess. I know we aren't Catholic, but you need to confess. There's a lot that the Catholic Church gets wrong. I won't list them all right now. But one thing they get right is confession. The Bible lets us know if we confess our faults, he is just and faithful to forgive us and to cleanse us of all unrighteousness. In fact, it also says, confess your faults one to another that you may pray and be healed. The effectual fervent prayers of the righteous availeth much. Isn't that amazing that we love quoting the effectual fervent prayers of the righteous, but we never quote the preliminary, which is that I got to confess my faults one to another, which means I got to confess my faults to somebody other than me, that I got to confess my faults, watch this, to somebody other than God. He says, confess your faults one to another. Why? That you may pray.
Yes, sir.
And be healed. Is it possible that some of us are not healed because we won't confess? That some of us are going to prayer line after prayer line. And God is saying you would never have to hop in a prayer line again if you would just pick up your phone and call somebody and tell them what's wrong. I know this ain't super spooky. Spin around 3 times, high five your neighbor, and it's all going to be done. But how much of this unnecessary stuff are we doing when we could just confess and be all right? Watch it. Some of y'all have turned pastors into prophets because you won't confess. And they just finally said, Lord, just show me, because they won't open their mouth. We got to confess. The Father says, and this is where I wanted to really deal with. Immediately, the father of the boy cried out, I do believe. Help my unbelief. Now that sounds like a contradiction to me. He says, I do believe. Help my unbelief. How is that possible? How can you tell me that you believe, but then ask me to help your unbelief? I thought you believed. What's going on here? I began to ask God, you got to help me with this, because the man said he believes. And so if he believes, that should just be it. Either you believe or you don't. That's how we teach in the church. Either you believe God or you don't. This man says, I believe. Help my unbelief. And here's the amazing thing. Jesus does not rebuke this man. Think about that. Some of you have had pastors or just random church folks where you say, hey, listen, I'm struggling in my faith. And they rebuke you. Aren't you a believer? Don't you believe God can do anything? Don't you remember? The Lord woke you up this morning, started you on your way, clothed you in your right mind. What you mean you don't believe? Jesus never rebukes this man. And I think I know why. See, I looked at that word unbelief in the Greek. Y'all want to learn some Greek today?
Yes, sir.
The word is apistia. It's the word apistia, A-P-I-S-T-I-A, apistia. Can I tell you what apistia means? It means without persuasion.
My God, my God.
So he says, I believe, but I'm not persuaded. I believe, but I'm not persuaded. I had to dig some deeper into that. I'm like, okay, hold on. We getting somewhere, God. What's going on here? He's not persuaded. And next to the without persuasion, it says unfaithfulness. Okay. I believe, but I'm not faithful.
Come on.
I'm not faithful.
Come on.
I'm not full of faith. I have faith, but I'm not full of faith. I have faith, but I'm not full of faith. And many of us, if we'll be honest, are just like this man. God, I got faith. The problem is I'm not full. I'm not full of this faith. And this is why Jesus doesn't rebuke this man. He says, I get it. I get it. Because when you found your baby unconscious, it took some of your faith. When you saw your child on fire, it took some of your faith. When the person you trusted did that to you, it took some of your faith. When they rejected you in the church, it took some of your faith. When the pastor used you for his own gain or her own gain, it took some of your faith. When they didn't come through like they said they was going to come through, it took some of your faith. And the truth of the matter is, some of us are not faithless. We're just not faithful. Thursday. I'm working at home. I'm in my office. And my wife had shared with me before she left that her laptop had been acting crazy. And so, you know me, I'm an IT guy. I started tinkering with her laptop, and I noticed that it was in need of some upgrades. And so I started running some upgrades on it. Now, I noticed that the battery was a little low, but I was like, I can handle the upgrades. And so I got the upgrades going, and I'm taking calls, but I'm still upgrading her laptop. And I'm taking calls and upgrading her laptop. And finally, the laptop said, you need to plug me in or it's not going to be good. It didn't say it in those exact words, but essentially the laptop said either plug me in or it ain't going to be good. Now, I know the laptop. I'm like, you good. The update is almost done. You got 5%. You can make it through the up. I'm having a real life conversation with the laptop. You got 5%. You good. Yeah, now if you was on 1%, that'd be a problem. But you on 5%. Well, apparently, a part of the update required a little more juice than I expected. And that 5% shot down to 1% and shot to 0%, and the screen went black. I grabbed the power cable, plugged it into the wall, I hit the button, nothing happened. I hit the button again, nothing happened. Closed the cover, opened it up, hit the button, nothing happened. Unplugged it, plugged it back in, nothing happened. I'm freaking out because it looks like my wife's laptop has died. Well, I gave it a little more time. And I hit the button again. And it came back up, and watch this, it continued the update. What am I saying? What am I saying? The laptop had enough battery to start the update, but it didn't have enough to finish. It had enough to get the process going, but it didn't have enough to see it to the end. This is why he could bring his son to Jesus, because he had enough to get him there, but he didn't have enough to get him healed. And many of you are in the same boat, and watch this, you're killing yourself because you're saying, I got enough faith to make it happen. But if you would be honest with yourself, you really only got enough to get it started. But because you don't trust nobody, you keep trying to go all the way. And like my laptop, if you're not careful, you might not come back home. And there are people who have lost their faith completely because they had no one they could confess to that my faith is low. Because the last time I told you my faith was low, you told me I had no faith. And there's a difference. No. I can have faith and just not be full. If you knew what I was going through, you would see that my faith tank ain't on full because I dealt with this on Monday and I struggled with this on Tuesday and I lost this on Wednesday and I fought with this on Thursday and I had to give up this on Friday and I barely got up on Saturday and I had just enough faith to get here and you're telling me I don't have faith. No. I believe, but help my unbelief. Just because I'm not faithful does not mean I'm faithless. It just means I had enough faith to get to this moment. And I need to trust you in this moment to not let me die. But watch this, to plug me into the source that can fill me up again. Don't fill me with your opinions about my faith. Don't fill me with your opinions about my theology. Don't fill me with your opinions about what you think about me. Plug me into the source. And we need to be a church where when people come in who are not faithful, we don't throw them away thinking they're faithless, but we say, thank you for trusting us with your low faith. Now let's plug you into the source. The laptop would not have died if I had moved my pride out of the way and plugged it into the source it was asking for. Because watch this, before my laptop died, it confessed. It said, plug me in, or I ain't gonna make it. And I ignored the confession, and I let it die. Many churches should have arrest warrants because people came and confessed, and we let them die.
Yes, Lord.
If you're going to increase your weary faith, you have to find a community of believers that you can confess to. You need some friends or a friend where you and outside of God. Because he says, don't miss it, confess your faults one to another, that you may pray and be healed.
Yes, sir.
So watch this. When I confess to you, I need you to pray, but also my healing is on the line.
Yes.
So never get tired of me bringing my confessions to you because I'm trying to get healed.
Yes.
James 5:16, if you want to look it up.
Yes, sir. That's it.
If you're going to increase weary faith, you got to locate the cause of your unbelief. You have to be willing to go back to find out, where did you lose it? What happened? What were you believing God for the last time? Where you lost it? You got to stretch your capacity to believe. It's not enough to have good eyes. We need good vision. God is saying, I have put a vision in you, and where there is no vision, the people perish. The problem with many of us, we are perishing because we got great eyesight, but we have no vision. And we need to make a confession. I need to find at least one or two believers where when my faith is low, they can plug me into the source. As your pastor, tell me when your faith is low, and I will plug you into the source. Your brothers and sisters in here, tell them when your faith is low, and they will plug you into the source. And if they don't plug you into the source, come back to the source so I can resource them and get you back connected. I know many of us, our faith has gotten weary. But just because you're not faithful, it doesn't mean you are faithless.